Elisa Lam, 2013. Elisa Lam was a 21-year-old Canadian student visiting Los Angeles in early 2013. She checked into the infamous Cecil Hotel on January 26, first sharing a room with strangers, but soon, after other guests complained about her odd behavior, she was moved to a room alone. On January 31st, the day she was meant to check out and continue her journey, she was seen alive for the last time. That evening, hotel staff and a bookstore manager nearby recalled her clearly. She seemed calm, polite, chatting about which books she would take home. But when she didn't check out or call her family, worry turned into fear. Her parents reported her missing on February 8th. Then came the chilling twist. On February 13th, the LAPD released surveillance footage from the hotel elevator, taken the day she vanished. In the now viral 2.5-minute clip, Elisa appears deeply distressed. She presses multiple buttons, steps in and out, peeks into the hallway, gestures strangely, and hides as if someone, or something, is following her. That footage sparked endless theories. Was she fleeing from a threat only she could see? Was it psychosis? Drugs? Yet toxicology reports later showed no recreational substances in her system. While investigations continued, guests at the hotel began complaining about unusually low water pressure. Some noticed the water looked discolored and tasted bad. On February 19th, a maintenance worker checking in the roof cisterns found Elisa's naked body floating in one of the tanks, about 3/4 full. Her clothes, room key, and watch were also inside. The hatch was too small to pull her out, so the tank had to be cut open to recover her body. The post-mortem on February 21st found no signs of trauma or sexual assault. Toxicology tests showed only her prescription and over-the-counter medications, along with a hint of alcohol, no illicit drugs at all. The coroner said her bipolar disorder and possibly a psychotic episode were significant factors. By June 20th, 2013, her death was officially ruled an accidental drowning, worsened by her mental health condition. Investigators also looked into how she managed to get into the water tank. The rooftop was supposed to be secure, locked behind alarmed doors, but footage showed it could be reached through the fire escape. When her body was found, 2 of the tank lids were open. Experts believed Elisa had climbed up there in a disoriented state, entered the tank, and drowned, unable to get out. They found no evidence of foul play. After the investigation ended, 2 lawsuits were filed, one by hotel guests and another by her family for wrongful death, but both were dismissed by 2015. Still, despite all the conspiracy theories triggered by the unsettling elevator footage and the hotel's dark history, official investigations always came to the same conclusion. Her death was a tragic accident, backed by solid evidence and expert analysis. The Yuba County Five, 1978. On February 24, 1978, 5 friends from Yuba County set out for a fun night. Gary Mathias, Jack Madruga, Jackie Hewitt, Ted Weir, and Bill Sterling were excited to watch a basketball game at Chico State. Jack drove them in his turquoise and white Mercury Montego. After the game, they stopped at a local market before it closed at 10 p.m. That was the last time anyone ever saw them alive. Days later, their car was found deep in the Plumas National Forest, nearly 60 miles off their route home. It wasn't stuck, damaged, or out of fuel. The keys were missing, but inside were snack wrappers and a neatly folded road map. Why would they leave a perfectly working car in the freezing wilderness at night? The mystery darkened in June, when melted snow revealed Ted Weir's body in a deserted Forest Service trailer 20 miles from where they left the car. He had wrapped himself in 8 blankets, but still froze and starved to death. The trailer had matches, fuel, heavy clothes, and enough food to last a year, yet none of it was used. Nearby, animals had scattered the skeletal remains of Jack, Bill, and Jackie. They had died of hypothermia. Only Gary Mathias was never found, though his shoes were in the trailer, suggesting he made it there too. A ranger had actually spotted their car just days after they vanished, but snowstorms slowed the search. Witnesses came forward. One man saw lights and heard voices near the car that night, but when he called out for help, everything went silent. Another store clerk claimed to see 2 of them days later in Brownsville, waiting by a phone booth while the others bought food inside. But no one knows if that sighting was real. Some say they followed snowcat tracks into the forest, thinking they led somewhere safe. Their cognitive disabilities likely made it harder to survive. But why didn't Ted use the food and fuel in the trailer? Why leave a warm car to walk into darkness? And where did Gary Mathias go? No foul play was ever proven. Officially, it remains a tragic accident. 5 men lost in the cold, 4 found, and 1, Gary, is still missing to this day. The Dyatlov Pass Incident, 1959. In early February 1959, 9 hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out for an adventure that they never returned from. Led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, their goal was to reach Otorten Mountain. They were experienced and well prepared, but on a freezing night in the Ural Mountains, something so terrifying happened that they cut their way out of their own tent and ran into the dark, icy wilderness without proper clothing or shoes. When rescuers finally found their campsite, it was a chilling sight. The tent was half buried in snow and torn open from the inside, as if they were desperate to escape. Footprints led down a slope toward a forest almost a mile away. The first 2 bodies were found under a big pine tree, barefoot, with remains of a small fire they had tried to light. A bit closer to the tent lay 3 more bodies, including Dyatlov himself, as if they were trying to crawl back for safety. But the real horror appeared 2 months later, when the last 4 hikers were discovered in a ravine under deep snow. Some had terrible internal injuries, crushed chests, and fractured skulls, with no visible wounds outside. Even stranger, a few were missing their eyes, tongue, or eyebrows, possibly due to scavengers and freezing water after death. But it only added to the mystery. At first, Soviet investigators said 6 died of hypothermia while 3 were fatally injured by an overwhelming natural force. No sign of foul play, animal attack, or fights was ever found. For decades, people whispered about UFOs, secret weapons, or a Yeti attack. In 2020, Russian officials reopened the case and decided that a slab avalanche caused the tragedy. Scientists explained that when the hikers set up their tent, they accidentally cut into a weak layer of snow. Later that night, strong winds piled more snow on top, making it collapse onto the tent. Some hikers were injured by the falling snow. Scared and with no time to put on their clothes, they ran out into the freezing night. Sadly, the ones who were badly hurt or too weak couldn't survive and never made it back. Even with this explanation, many feel something is missing. Why would trained hikers camp in an avalanche zone? Why the extreme fear that made them slash their own tent? The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the world's most haunting unsolved mysteries, frozen in time under the silent snow. Armin Maius, 2001. It started with a strange ad on the internet. A man in Germany was looking for someone strong and willing to be eaten. On March 9, 2001, 43-year-old Bernd Brands, a computer engineer from Berlin, answered that ad. He met 39-year-old Armin Maius, a quiet computer repairman living alone in the small town of Wustfeld. That evening, the 2 of them drove back to Maius's large, isolated house. No one could have imagined what would happen next. Inside, the mood was oddly calm. The men talked, shared a meal, and set up cameras. Brands had agreed to everything. He'd taken pills and cough syrup to relax him. Then, in an almost surreal act, Maius cut off Brands' penis. They tried to cook and eat it together, but it didn't go as planned. The meat burned, and the rest was fed to Maius's dog. Brands was left bleeding in the bathtub for hours, alive but fading. Eventually, Maius ended it. He stabbed Brands in the throat, then hung his body on a meat hook. The entire thing, every moment, was caught on tape. The whole ordeal lasted about 8 hours. This wasn't the first time Maius had spoken to others online. He had chatted with over 20 people about similar fantasies, but this was the only time someone had actually followed through. Nearly 2 years later, a concerned internet user tipped off police. When they searched Maius's home, They found what they feared: human remains, bones buried in the yard, body parts in the freezer, and stacks of disturbing video footage. At first, Maiwis claimed it wasn't murder. Brands had agreed to die. He said it was all about desire, not hate. Doctors said he was strange but sane. The court didn't buy the idea of consensual cannibalism. He was first sentenced to just over 8 years for manslaughter, but that didn't last. In a second trial, Maiwis was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. To this day, people still whisper about the case, not just because of what happened, but because Brands said yes. It forces a question most of us would rather avoid. How far can consent really go?